For this training segment, we're going to look at the 3 household types as defined by HUD and their subcategories and collect demographics. So the 3 household types are households with children, households without children, and households with only children. We're going to gather demographics on each of these household types on the households that you provided shelter to on January 28, 2015. Right. Then what we're going to look at is we're going to look at a subcategory type of veteran households within your households with children and your households without children. Once we complete that, we're going to then look at all of the households in all 3 of your household types, households with children, households without children, and households with only children. And we're going to look at a subcategory of youth households within all of those households. Now, I know it sounds a little complicated, but let's just dig into it and walk through it step by step and see if it doesn't become a little clearer as we go through the survey, okay? So the first tab we're going to look at is households with children. Now, households with children are defined as households that has at least one adult age 18 and older and at least one child age 17 and younger. So the first thing you're going to do is look at all of the households that you housed on the night of January 28th and identify those households which meet this definition, okay? Now once you've done that, then you're going to pull those households aside, and we're going to look at specifically those households and answer the questions concerning demographics on households with children, okay? So for this example, the first thing I'm going to answer, of course, is what county are my beds in? And in this example, I'm going to use Cole County because that's where I'm located at. And then I'm going to look at when I identified how many households were with me on that evening, the night of January 28th, how many households fit this definition of this household type, and I had 4 households fitting that definition, right? Now, within those 4 households, I need to know how many individuals in those households were age 17 and younger, and in this example, I had 7. I had 1 individual that fell between the age of 18 and 24, and I had 3 individuals that were age 25 and over, okay? Now, my total number of individuals housed in those 4 households is 11. That's a number that we need to remember because we need to know that our gender needs to add up to 11 as well as we come down here. We want to know of those total 11 individuals, both adults and children, how many of them fit in each of these gender categories. Now, this point in time count, we have 4 gender categories. We have female, we have male, and they've taken the category of transgender and they've broken it down even further to be transgender male to female or transgender female to male. So in this example, my 11 individuals housed broke down to have 6 that were female, 5 that were male, and we didn't have any that were transgendered, okay? Now, I have to come down now, and with these 11 individuals, I'm going to look at their race breakout. Now, there's something new here. This year, according to the guidance, an individual that is counted underneath 2 or more races have to also be included in at least 2 of the races above. That's a little complicated. But what that means is if you have someone who is biracial, for instance, and so you would put that you have a single individual who is biracial. That individual is both African American and white, okay? So that is a single individual off of our 11. We still have 10 individuals that we need to break out and include them in our race breakdown. We had 3 additional individuals whose race was black. So I'm going to take my 3 and add the 1 to it, and I'm going to have a total of 4 there. We had 7 individuals whose race was white. So I'm going to add my 7 to my 1, and there will be 8 there. We didn't have any Asian, American Indian, or Native Hawaiian. Now, These numbers do not add up to 11, and they're not going to because of having one in the 2 or more races, okay? But we're still looking at a total of 11 individuals housed when we come to question 21, and we want to know, of those 11 individuals in the 4 households, how many had the ethnicity of Hispanic? And then in this example, we did not have any Hispanic, okay? For question number 22, this is to assist the continuum of care in identifying unmet need within our continuum. We report this number on an annual basis to HUD. And to answer this question, we want you to look at the 4 households that you identified right up here in question number 18, okay? So we're going to look at our 4 households. How many of those 4 households would only need emergency shelter to assist them to being able to obtain and maintain permanent housing, okay? Which means that their stay in your shelter is going to provide them what they need for when they leave your project, they will be able to go out into permanent housing. So for this example, of the 4 households that we served that night, I had 1 household that I knew that once they went through my emergency shelter project that they would be able to go into permanent housing. I had another household that I knew my emergency shelter project was not going to get them where they needed to be to obtain and maintain permanent housing. I knew that they really needed to go into a transitional housing project that could allow them to stay up to 24 months, had more wraparound services to get them connected into mainstream services to assist them to being able to go out into permanent housing. I did not have any households that needed the intensive services provided in a safe haven, but I did have the additional 2 households I knew were going to need to go into a permanent supportive housing project with wraparound services to be able to have permanent housing. Okay, so these numbers do add up to my total number of 4 households as listed in number 18 above. Now, please remember the definitions again of these project types are on your definition page, and so please refer to that when trying to make this determination as to what type of project your households were going to need to be able to end their homelessness and have them in permanent housing. Okay, so that was the data that we collected on our total number of households with children. Now, the next tab, we're going to look at a subcategory of these 4 households, and this subcategory is titled Veteran Households with Children. Now again, the households with children definition is a household with at least 1 adult age 18 or older and 1 child at least 17 or younger. Now, to meet this subcategory, they must have a veteran in the household. Okay, so I'm going to start off again by putting my county that my beds are located in, and then I'm going to be looking at these 4 households and identifying, do any of those 4 households have a veteran? And for this example, I do have 1 household that has a veteran. There's a total of 2 individuals in that household, of which only 1 is the veteran. Then I'm going to look at the race breakdown. And I apologize that that square is blackened. There is no data that goes in there. In this example, I had 1 female and I had 1 male, and I did not have any transgender. So now I'm looking at my 2 individuals and determining what the race is. And in this example, both individuals, race was white. And when looking at ethnicity, neither of the 2 individuals in this household were Hispanic. So again, the data that you're entering on this tab is a subcategory of the data that you entered on this tab. I had 4 total households with children, and I entered all my data on all the individuals in those 4 households on this tab. Then when I went to this tab, I was looking only at these 4 households and identifying, do I have any of those households with veteran? And if I did, then I answered these questions on that specific household. Okay. I know it may be a little confusing, but I'm hoping that this is helping to clear it up just a little bit. We're going to do it again now on households without children, so that might be helpful as well. The next household type we're going to look at is the households without children. Now, by definition, a household without children is defined as a household comprised of only adults 18 or older. This could be a single adult in a household, or it could be a couple presenting with no children in the household. And in that instance, you would have one household with 2 adults. Okay? So for this example, what I do is I look at my total households that I provided shelter to on that night, and I identify what households meet this definition of households without children. And in this example, I had 7 households meeting that definition. Now, I'm only going to look at the individuals within those 7 households to answer the rest of these questions. I want to identify within those 7 households how many individuals were between the age of 18 to 24, and in this example we had 2, and how many of those individuals were between the age of, or were someone who was 25 or older, and in this example we have 5. As you can see here, we had a total of 7 individuals in our 7 households. We did not, in this example, have a household with 2 adults presenting. To answer question 28, again, I am going to look at those 7 individuals and break them down by their gender. And again, I apologize that this square was not bolded. It should have been. Those 7 individuals, we had 4 who were female, we had 3 who were male, and we did not have any who presented as transgender, whether it be transgender male to female or transgender female to male. Now, I'm now going to look at those 4 individuals and determine their race, and how many individuals fit in each of these race categories, and I apologize, it's 7 individuals. For this example, we had 3 whose race was black or African American, 3 who were white. We did not have any in the Asian category, but we did have 1 who presented as American Indian. None in our Native and Hawaiian, and we did not have any with 2 or more races. Because we didn't have any under the 2 or more races, this category actually will add up to our total 7 individuals. Now we're going to look at those 7 individuals and determine, did any of them have ethnicity of Hispanic? And in this example, we did have 1 whose ethnicity was Hispanic. Now we're ready to look at our households and look at our unmet need determination. Again, we are looking at 7 households. And in this example, I refer back to the definitions page, review my definitions, and realize that to end homelessness for these 7 households, I have 1 household that is stay in an emergency shelter will be what is needed. I have 2 households that need to go into transitional housing programs. I have none going into safe haven, and I have 4 who need to go into permanent housing programs to end their homelessness. So now I have finished entering the data on all of the households that met the definition for my household type of households without children. Now, I need to look at the subcategory of veteran households without children. And to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus specifically on these 7 households, and I'm going to determine, do I have any of those households that have veterans in them? So again, a veteran household without children is a veteran is defined as an adult who served in active duty in the armed forces, does not include inactive military reserves or the National Guard, and they are presenting in a household without children, which is defined as a household comprised only of adults age 18 or older. In this example, when I went back and I looked at my 7 households, within those 7 households, I had 3 who were veterans. All of my households were individual households, so I only had 3 people within those 3 households, and all 3 were veterans. Then in determining what were the gender of the 3 individuals, I had 1 who was female, 1 who was male, and I didn't have any in the transgender. And I apologize, that was 2 that was male, for a total of 3. Disregard this square. Then of those 3 individuals, I'm going to be looking and determining what was my race. And in this example, I had 1 who was Black or African American, 2 who were white, and I didn't have any in the other remaining categories. Of the 3 individuals, I did not have any who were Hispanic. So again, the data that you're entering on this tab is a subcategory of the data on this tab. Answer the questions on here, and then identify of these households how many fit this definition, and answer the questions on this tab only on those households. Okay? Next, we're going to go to the households with only children. Households with only children is defined as households with only persons 17 or younger. This could include a single-child household, sibling groups, or even parenting youth, which is adolescent parents and their children, an individual age 17 or younger who presents with a child. For this example, what again I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the total households that I provided shelter to that night and determine, do I have any households that meet the definition of this household type? And in this example, I had 2 households meeting that definition. Now, for the remaining questions, I'm going to look specifically at the individuals within those 2 households. And I had 1 household, which was an age 17-year-old presenting by themselves, so that was a 1-child household. My other household was actually a sibling group. It was a brother and a sister presenting, both underneath the age of 17, so that was 1 household that was a multi-child household with 2 individuals within that household. So now we have 2 households and 3 individuals. I'm going to answer question 37 and 38 on those 3 individuals. I had 1 female and I had 2 male, and I did not have any that went into the category of transgender male to female. Now, looking at the race in this example, I actually had 2 individuals who presented as having 2 or more races, and the 2 or more races that they presented having were biracial, African American, and white. So I'm going to go ahead and enter those numbers. Just for me, it makes it easier to enter the numbers, and then realize that I now have to look at the single individual that I have left and what is his race, what are their race. And in this example, that individual was white. So I'm going to add my 1 to the 2 and make 3 in there. And I did not have any in the other categories. Okay? If you have any questions on this section, don't hesitate to call us. Then in this example, I want to look and see, do I have any who are Hispanic? And I do not. Now, again, I'm going to answer my question on unmet need by looking at the 2 households listed in question 37. And in this example, I do not feel that either household will be able to end their homelessness with only the stay in my emergency shelter. I believe that both are going to take stays in transitional housing, but that stay in the transitional housing of up to 24 months with wraparound services is going to be enough to end their homelessness and have them into permanent housing. So I'm going to put them in that category. Again, you can see this number adds up to our number up here. Now, obviously, we do not have a subcategory of veterans for households with only children. By definition, a veteran cannot be a child. However, our next subcategory is youth households. Youth households is a subcategory of all three types of households as defined by HUD. So we're going to try to walk through this a little slower to really try to look at how do we identify these households. There are two different types of youth households. One is a parenting youth household. Now, a parenting youth household is defined as one where the parent or guardian is age 24 or younger, and they present with a child age 18 or younger. That's considered to be a parenting household. So that could be an 18-year-old with a 1-year-old. It could be a 24-year-old with a 5-year-old. But they have, the parent is age 24 or younger, and it does have a child age 18 or younger in that household. Unaccompanied youth are now persons age 24 and younger, where prior to this point in time count, our unaccompanied youth was focused specifically on individuals age 17 and younger. That definition has been expanded now to age 24. So for unaccompanied youth, we'll look at the number of households who present unaccompanied by children and are age 24 and younger. So what we do now is we go back to each of our household types. And with our households with children, we know that we have one individual between the age of 18 and 24, a single household, or a household that has an individual between the age of 18 and 24. It's a parenting household. They presented as an individual with a child in that age group of 18 to 24. We look at our households without children, and we realize that we have two households here presenting with individuals that are age 24 and younger. And then we look at our households with only children and realize that we have two households here presenting with individuals that are age 18 and younger. Those households, we combine them together to answer the questions here on this tab, looking at youth households. And in this instance, if we go back again, we realize that we had one household here, we had two households here, and we had two households here. So we have a total of 5 households that we're going to be looking at for this example. We had one parenting youth household that had a single parent in that household who was between the age of 18 and 24, for a total of one parenting youth. The child, or that household had one child under the age of 18. All right? Now we're looking at our households without children and our households with only children to determine how many unaccompanied youth households did we have. And in this example, in looking at those households, we know that we had 5, and I apologize, I think this was a 6. We had 5 unaccompanied youth households. We had 3 individuals in those households that were under the age of 18, and we had 2 individuals in those households that were between the age of 18 to 24. So for questions 44 and 45, please note that we're only answering it for the parenting youth and the unaccompanied youth. We are not going to be including the child in these 2 questions. So we have a total of 6 because we have 1 parenting adult and we have 5 unaccompanied youth. So we're going to look at those 6 individuals and determine what is the gender breakout. And in this example, we had 3 female, we had 3 male, and we did not have any transgender. Then I'm going to look at these 6 individuals and see what their races were. I had 1 individual who presented as biracial, both black and black and white. I'm going to enter those numbers first because it's easier for me. And then I realize that I have to look at the remaining 5 and determine what those races are. I had 3 individuals whose race was black or African American, so I'm going to add them to my 1. And I had 2 individuals who were white, so I'm going to add those here. And I'm going to put zeros in the remaining because I didn't have any in those races. Now, looking at the 6 individuals again, how many presented as Hispanic? And in this example, I had 1. So again, youth households is a subcategory of all 3 of the household types: households with children, households without children, and households with only children. We recognize that this is definitely a little complicated, and I encourage you that if you have any questions that can't be answered by referring to your definitions list, to please give us a call here at the office and we will walk you through this. That's what we're here for. That ends this training segment, and the next training segment we will go into subpopulation information.